I've been in a kind of reflective mood for the last month or so, running into the new year and thinking about what we've got and the potential of where we're going and what we can do, but also the challenges of getting this right and the difficulties of working in this market and all that sort of stuff. It's been good. It's been an interesting year, but we've, I think, demonstrably not quite hit the full stride yet. And that's something I want us to get into. And I'm going to lay out where I think we are at as a project. And next week, jump into a kind of week of road mapping and plotting out where we want to go. So this week's a kind of reflection on everything that's happened so far with the project. And I want next week to be a very proactive road mapping process where we get down on paper everything that we can do and start to prioritize and think about what it is everyone wants, what direction we want to go in. And I want it to be a kind of collective enterprise that we do that. I think we've got many directions we can run in. And I think we're going to need to, we can die if we pick the wrong ones, and we can win if we pick the right ones. So I think we've got to take almost like a collective responsibility of that direction. I don't know what people's thoughts on that are. Yeah, I think what we've got to do is the whole week is a kind of process of taking stock. I think we need a fairly coherent dive into each of our DApps. I'm gonna overview where I think we're at on each of those in this session, and then I think we just need to get all of our documentation into one place, a clear articulation of everything we've got, an understanding of all the directions that we can go into. So yeah, I think we can do multiple sessions next week on essentially almost taking an inventory of everything we've got and the possibilities and directions of all of them, and then make decisions around our priorities. So maybe it's next week we do our priorities vote. All right. It's quite a few people here, so I'm just going to jump in. If everyone's on the stage, if you mute your mics for now, interrupt me if you really want to. But for the most part, you can just chill. And what might be a good idea is that you can, if any questions come to mind that you want us to talk about at the end, if you drop them in the general chat, then we can pick them up thereafter. And at the end, we'll have an opportunity to invite anyone up onto the stage and unpack any of this stuff a bit further. So, all right, I think let's start then. So I'm calling this session 2021 a year in review for finance.vote. And I think 2021 was a very interesting year in crypto. I think it's fairly remarkable, in fact. So really what I want to do is go into what happened mostly with us over last year. I'm going to start with a market outlook of where we've come from. It helps to contextualize where we're at in the kind of macro market context and where we fit into it. So I'm going to pick through what I think have been the important events and projects that we've worked on over the last 12 months. And the purpose of this is to give us a space of reflection where we can ask ourselves some hard questions and then make some judgments about where we want to go this year. So yeah, a bit of a market out. I was looking at the charts earlier. If you wind back a little bit further than 2021, go to March 2020, the entire crypto market cap was $100 billion. So after the Corona crash, there was a huge sell-off in all markets, and crypto bounced out of that moment extremely quickly. But the whole space, every single token, was capitalized at $100 billion. So that's all tokens, Bitcoin, Ethereum, and every single shitcoin, everything was $100 billion. Yesterday, we had one red candle in the market that was $200 billion. So the rate at which this market has expanded has just been utterly phenomenal. And I'm fairly convinced there's been no market sector ever that has grown from such a small thing to such a big thing in such a short space of time. So we've just gone through this kind of explosive, broader market expansion. And I think it's worth looking and contextualizing where we're at compared to the last major market cycle in 2017, which was predominantly down to the movement of mainly Bitcoin and Ethereum. And that was the main thing. And the other major move was tokens, ICOs, altcoins. And in that period, huge amounts of money flowed into the space to basically come in and start like trading these other alternative currencies. And a lot of bad behaviors crept into the market, a lot of vaporware, and the bubble completely popped. And the whole market reset to this absolute bottom, which is not all that long ago, about just over 18 months ago. And I think what's happened this time has that we've seen the emergence of some new and important use cases. So in 2020, we saw the rise of DeFi, which I do think is probably the biggest challenge to centralized finance that we've ever seen. And it's become one of the most important aspects of fintech globally. It's talked about continually in the same bracket as fintech, which has been one of the biggest growing industries of the last 10 years, which is crazy. 18 months ago, it was literally a small number of anonymous token experiments, practically. And now it's gaining the attention of global regulators. And I will talk about regulation in a bit. But it has, in 2021, had a huge market drawdown. If you look at DeFi throughout 2021 and you benchmark it against Ethereum as a base asset, it's been in a complete bear market. And in many ways, we were in that bucket of DeFi projects that emerged out of 2020 and have had largely a similar kind of ride. So you're looking at tokens like Compound and Aave, YFI, all that kind of DeFi 1.0 as they're now bracket, have had a really tough year in the market, which I think is interesting because broadly the market has been continued at expansion, but for the first time we've seen use cases have their own micro bear markets within the market. And in 2021, I think it's fair to say it was the year of NFTs. And it's interesting that kind of market attention moved from DeFi to NFTs. It shifted from yield farming games to chasing tokenized JPEGs. And much of it has just, I've been intensely watching this market for many years, found it completely insane. The idea that people will buy a tokenized picture of a rock for $3 million is just bonkers. And I think there's been a lot of market froth throughout this year, but NFTs have captivated the world's imagination. And I think that's really put us in a fascinating market context where all of a sudden everyone is talking about crypto. We've had CryptoPunks sold at NFTs. Eminem and I think it's Snoop Dogg are talking about using their Bored Apes as part of their Super Bowl halftime show in a few weeks. We're now a mainstream idea. So I think although we're just in the middle of this kind of market drawdown again, we're roughly at the same market price as we were 12 months ago. So 2021 started with Bitcoin at 60K. And by March, April, we'd had a 50% drawdown. And a lot of people thought it was over at that point. And it was NFTs that brought it all back to life. And we've had everyone from Grimes to Melania Trump shifting JPEGs for millions of dollars. And I don't think that's going to go back in the box. And NFTs are this use case that we've been looking for that drives the utility of cryptocurrency to a wider market and a wider exposure for the less technical, less financially minded global audience. So what's been interesting this year is that we've now got these counter cycles where DeFi goes down and NFTs go up. And when NFTs go down, layer one protocols go up. And this is good. This means that we can have a macro market expansion whilst having these periodic cleanouts where, low effort profile picture NFTs don't work anymore. Hyperinflated yield farming Ponzi's don't work anymore. And this is really important. And I think we're getting into this process where the market cleanses itself, eliminates the kind of bad stuff, and new utility has a boom. And people are talking about what's the next big thing. It could be one of a number of basket of things. I think layer 2 technologies are going to be exceptionally big this year. I think the roll-ups and the various other scaling technologies will drop tokens, and that's going to drive liquidity out to layer 2 and create low fee environments for people to build dApps. And I think that's going to be really exciting. We've also got this play to GameFi movement that's coming, and generally the crossover with the gaming market, which is a $1 trillion industry, is going to start interacting with cryptocurrency. That's going to be utterly huge and introduce crypto to an entirely new audience again. And it's possible that the kind of thing, the next big thing this year could be DAOs. Although price-wise, we're basically back to where we started last year, we've had an insane amount of progress, both new utility in the market expanding out. We're not in the case that we were in 2017, where it was just the major cryptocurrencies and a bunch of vaporware. Now we've got substantially important technologies coming that could drive a kind of genuine global adoption. So where we're at, we've progressed in that year, in this market context, and we're not where we started last year. We've now got 6, what I think are profoundly useful and disruptive applications that make part of what DAOs are going to need to push forward this new era of decentralized human organization. But it is different and weird, and we are unusual as a project. DAOs themselves as a concept haven't hit this hype wave yet in the way that NFTs have, but I think they will. So I'm going to dive into a bunch of different topics now. That's just around that in the market. I don't think we're due for a substantial bear market, which was an entire market reset where almost all the value and everyone in the space drifted out until everyone had forgot about it, and then it restarted again. I just think that is not going to happen this time, mainly because we've got this cleansing processes that is happening within the market without the full-on drawdowns. But it is going to get tougher this year. I don't think everything's going to expand like crazy in every direction. I think it's going to be more fundamentally driven, but it's also going to get a hell of a lot more noisy. There's going to be more scammers entering the space, more shillers, more influencers, more noise. So I think one of the hard problems that we're going to have to address is how we take our important technologies that are real and valuable into a space that is incredibly noisy and in many ways driven as a pure popularity contest. So on that note, I'm going to talk about our token. I'm going to get straight into that. So our token FVT has been traded since November 2020 now. So we're just over 13, 14 months. And we launched that with our own technology, auction.vote. And we did we created a mechanism called the exponential token auction. And throughout this process, the token discovered a price of about 2 cents, which at the time I thought was incredibly fair. That gives us a fully diluted valuation of $20 million, which in crypto is very sensible. And we've hit this process where we've been around this, actually at or below this kind of fair price we discovered at that time for most of those 13 or 14 months. There's a few things that I would have done differently. We configured this auction. The auction itself worked, I thought, brilliantly. It's a new mechanism that swaps tokens for Ether and in a decentralized way, in a non-custodial way, pushes that to liquidity in Uniswap without an intermediary. And I think it's actually a sort of really important mechanism that again was ahead of its time. One of the issues is that it was actually incredibly fair. The market cycle that sometimes tokens experience and launch happened inside this box. The main issue was that some of our early investors were liquid on day one. They were vested, but we give them around 25% of that, which was de rigueur at the time. Everyone gets a little bit of a liquidity on day one. And this created a kind of prisoner's dilemma within our investor set where they were all holding a little bit of tokens, and then one of our biggest investors dumped their tokens within 24 hours of the launch, which kind of wrecked our token down to like less than a cent, where it stayed for 6 months. And that was a really challenging time for us. It's what I call the angry token flipper stage, where I sat in that Telegram group for 50, 60 hours a week dealing with people asking me when the token price was going to up. When are you going to market this thing? And yeah, that was a kind of really challenging time. And I think for the large amount, we came out of that around a midpoint of the year. FVT hit 10 cents and we 20x'd off this bottom. And it correlated pretty closely to when we started to try and expand our markets application to go down the multi-chain route. And we took markets over to Binance Smart Chain, which didn't work. And I'll come to that in a bit. And this caused a kind of surge of our token price when we started to take our token out into this kind of degen space of Binance Smart Chain. And it popped our bubble because it didn't work. The BSC is an utterly janky piece of shit as a blockchain. It just doesn't work as it should do. And that disappointment, I think, is what popped our bubble and sent our token price back down again. And we picked up another wave of people who were disappointed about that downtrend. But I think this time we picked up a number of new people who actually started to get with where we're going. And some of you are in the crowd now. And yeah, I think it was a kind of interesting time, but it's still fundamentally disappointing. I did see when our token price 20x'd out the bottom, we all thought this was it. We all thought this was when we were going to break out and everyone's going to find out what we're doing and find out how interesting everything is. And in reality, it was a kind of small pool of degens that had discovered us, who moved from token to token very quickly. And that's what they did. But it did show us that it's possible for these huge market moves to happen when we find a new crowd of people, which is where I think we need to go next. So yeah, I think I'm going to run through a few other little bits, but I think it's important to address our token price. Right now, I think we're at around a cent, which is we're incredibly underperforming compared to the product that we've got. And it's hard to understand why. Some people will say, get onto centralized exchanges. That's going to put a huge strain on our treasury. It also puts us into a different category of a kind of regulatory point of view. And it's something that we may want to consider this year, but it's not a solution. I've spent quite a bit of time looking at tokens on KuCoin and the likes, and they still got practically zero volume. 99% of the tokens on KuCoin are dead. So there's no easy solution to this. And I think where we need to be is to really take a hard look at where we're at and position ourselves for what I think could be the beginning of the DAO wave. So it's possible that this might be the year of the DAO. And I think for that to happen, DAOs as an idea need to start hitting the mainstream imagination, not just within our little Web3 bubble. And where it is growing clear prominence, the kind of inner circle crypto thought leaders are all getting very excited about DAOs. Silicon Valley is getting excited about DAOs. But what needs to happen is that the idea itself needs to become accessible in the same way that NFTs did. So crypto has a few major issues. It's got hard adoption barriers. It's got a large chasm. The UX generally isn't there. And I think when done right, UX can funnel users effortlessly into a kind of desired outcome for an app. But for me, the barriers to DAO adoption are conceptual. They're not necessarily, it doesn't always come down to just ease of use. People need to know what a DAO is first before they can get excited about it. And that's the precursor bit that I think we're missing at the moment. But we have seen glimmers of it. We saw Constitution DAO, which caught the public imagination for a week. It was a flash in the pan, but it showed you what could happen. People can pool money and do interesting things with it in a new kind of collectivized format. And even though that failed, the token still 10x'd. And almost everyone who participated in that project got something out of it. And it did supplant DAOs in people's minds temporarily and pushed out NFTs for a couple of weeks. A year of the DAO one, that'll happen every week. There'll be someone else, someone interesting, doing something interesting with DAOs. And I absolutely believe that could happen this year. And in fact, it could be us that help drive that space. We've done quite a bit of trend chasing over the last 12 months. We were in DeFi, we were in NFTs, we were in prediction markets. And all of these things wrapped together to create a coherent suite. But we've been waiting for the market to do its move, and then we jump into the wave. Whereas I think when it comes to DAOs, we are the people that have to make this happen. I don't think we can wait for the rest of the market to leave the onset of DAOs into the public imagination. I think it has to be us, because we are genuinely leading this technologically. So if it's going to be the year of the DAOs, it's going to be us or one of a very small number of other projects that help drive that out. So just to review where we are at with our what we call the DAO suite, this drive into mainstreamification of adoption of decentralized organization is what we're aiming for. I'm very passionate about this. I do think decentralized organization is going to be profoundly important for humanity. And we're not playing a short pump and dump game. We're building infrastructure that will be important components of a kind of social movement. And the way I think that happens is if people who want to set up DAOs can do so with limited technical knowledge, with support, and with a kind of app ecosystem that's almost like the Google Apps ecosystem or Office 365 ecosystem, but tuned and specific for decentralized organizations. So each one of the tools that we've built is a kind of modular function for bits of DAO business. And I think one of the things that differentiates us from other DAO frameworks, there's now many people running at this, and by the end of this year, there'll be 100 DAO tooling startups. But what we've done is put considerable amount of time and thought into the token economics that surrounds a DAO. So the sequence of our bank, auction, and yield application is everything you need to launch a fungible token, and do so in a way that is more trustless with better trust models, and in fact safer for late participants who aren't involved in the launch to come in. And I think that's what ultimately will win out in the end. Most DAO frameworks are put money in a box and decide how to spend it, but how the token behaves outside of that ecosystem is not really thought about. So our first wave was almost the kind of launch, what's needed to launch a token DAO. So that's auction, yield, and bank. And as we've progressed, we've started to get into what actually we really want it where we want it to be, which is in the decentralized governance space. And now we've got influence, which I'm very convinced is a really exciting tool. I've wanted to get a quadratic voting based technology into practice to see how it affects decision making for a long time, and we've got it now. And I'm very convinced the kind of decision making and sense making that's possible with it is actually really important. And I think I'm very excited about where that's going to go next. So I'm going to quickly jump into each one of our apps and give you an update on what's happened to them this year. And this will frame our conversations for next week, where we really take a hard look at them. So Bank is our trustless token vesting system. We built it for ourselves, to vest our own in private sale investors and our own team tokens and all that sort of stuff. There wasn't a solution on the market at the time. And so we made it. And that's been a theme of how we've progressed through this process. We've built the stuff that we needed as a DAO so other people can use them. So we actually had this kind of pre-launch, but since then, Naomi's created some beautiful UX for this. It's a really lovely looking app. We've hit the second iteration of it, and it now functions as a kind of DAO payroll application as well as a vesting application. And we've integrated some interesting cryptography in there using Merkle roots that allows us to put a huge amount of data into this thing. We can distribute an allocation for 1 million people if we wanted to. And that, for me and for many on the team, actually, it feels like this might be our killer app. This might be the thing that really gets us noticed. And I think they might be right. This is a way for distributing tokens in a way that minimizes the impact on the current market price and does so that with user agency, users can come in and choose their own vesting schedules, set their own commitment to the project. And we're going to be doing this sequentially throughout the year, where we'll do iterative airdrops for people doing work on the DAO. And I think it genuinely has the potential to be a crucial piece of many DAOs business in the future. I haven't seen, there's a couple of other similar projects on the market, but no one does it quite like this one. And I think it's a really beautiful and nicely built app, and I'm excited where that can go. So we'll be using that very soon into this year. I'm very comfortable with where that application is at the moment. Auction, which I mentioned earlier, is the way that we issued our own tokens. And what this is, what we call a liquidity bootstrapping machine. And in many ways, it was well ahead of its time. Last year, the market needed to go through this fairly greedy pump and dump dynamic where every launch spiked to some ridiculous valuation, and experience what happens in the market when that happens, which is 9 to 10 months drawdowns, and everyone who buys in the market loses. And I think there's enough evidence out there now that something different is necessary. We're starting to see people get really upset about VCs of being the ones that won in this cycle. Because we cancelled ICOs and public sales, most of the allocations went through private sales to VCs because it was deemed to be more safer, regulatory speaking. But consequently, now VCs own all the tokens, and they control too much of the market. We also didn't want to get into the launchpad game, which we could have been a competitor to PokerStarter or something like that. I just didn't like the direction that was going in. And because this tool does the opposite of, it finds a fair price, not generate a ridiculously inflated price, which gives everyone a pump and dump game to play, which lasts 3 days, but ultimately jeopardizes the project. So I didn't feel that this had product market fit at that time. And I'm fairly convinced that was correct. But I do think it might this year. So I'm really keen for us to revisit the auction application. And there's the potential to build in NFT dynamics in that auction system. It's a genuinely interesting auction design. I think price discovery is going to be seen as a much more important thing in 2022, potentially as things get tougher. IDOs don't work as well. NFTs don't work as well, and consequently finding the true price of something becomes more important. So I want us to revisit auction this year, but for me it's a little bit further down our priority stack. Yield.vote, I think this application's in a really nice state now. Once you've got your tokens vested, once you've got a liquid token economy, it becomes a really important DeFi primitive to then expand your market in depth through incentives. This is called liquidity mining. And there was a huge amount of problems, very much like the token launch space, in the liquidity mining games, where people essentially throw a load of free money at LPs. They come in, project ends up with $1 billion of depth for a week, and then when the incentives run out, the liquidity providers leave and chase some other incentive elsewhere. I think our product does here is we use Harberger taxes, which is designed to increase the allocation efficiency of tokens. So what typically happens in traditional liquidity mining is all the tokens go to a very small number of people. And we've created a little gamified experience that brings in genuine DAO participants rather than token whales who snatch all the tokens and run off with them and dump them into the market because they don't care about it. So again, I think we've got a well-formed tool here that we can offer to other DAOs. The important piece is that it can actually be controlled by governance, and I think we should re-explore the current token economics of yield at the moment, which actually has quite a high inflation at the moment. I think it's time for another vote on, and to really take a view on how much we need to incentivize our own liquidity. I think we've demonstrated that it works, and I think we can do this for many other projects, and I think we'll be on-ramping. I think it's potentially the easiest thing that we can on-ramp other DAOs into, and I think we've got a few people very interested in doing it right now, and I think we'll do that throughout Q1. But I do think we should review our dog food this ourselves and dial our liquidity emissions in that are suitable for us. Influence.vote is again, I absolutely love this application. And I think for me, is the thing that will really differentiate as we move forward. It's quadratic voting based. It's NFT first, so it's really good for NFT DAOs. It's gasless. And I think we've got this voting mechanism that no one else is using. We invented it, the kind of semantic ballot voting idea, that can really bring more people into building new proposals and driving more engagement into decentralized governance, which is typically a kind of low adoption affair. So I think Influence, you've probably used it if you're in the crowd. I think it's going to be, I'm incredibly bullish on that application. We're going to review that, give it a new look and feel this year, update it with our proposal system. It'll have the ability to do forum-like work that traditionally happens in discourse within the application itself. And I think our second layer governance suite, as we called it in our white paper, is probably the thing that I'm most excited about working on throughout this year. And then two other applications. We've got Mint, which was our most recently developed application, which we launched Shibaku with. And this, again, I think it's the other component for DAO launch. If auction and yield and bank are all about fungible token launches, if we're focusing on NFT DAOs, we need a mechanism for helping up. So we needed our own minting suite, and we've got one, and it solves some very important problems in the space. And yeah, I think we're in a very interesting position with that application. It's got a whitelisting system, very expressive eligibility gating system. And if you're using those tokens for governance, you need control over how the tokens are distributed in the initial state. So again, I think that's a super crucial application. It works beautifully now. We had some hiccups on the Shibaku launch, but actually I think it's in an incredibly great state at the moment. Our final app that I haven't talked about yet is Markets, which was our lead product from the outset. And I had grand plans for this thing to transition into a kind of futarchy type platform, which, if DAOs are ahead of their time, futarchy is at least 5 years ahead of its time. So I quickly understood that was never going to capture the public imagination at this point in time. So we stalled on the development of that a little bit. We got it to a state where it was decentralized, and really impressed with where we got it to. And I still think it has loads of potential. But the version 1.0 is not working as it should do. At the moment, we've got a small number of players who are essentially farming the tokens out of it. And I think that's adding a kind of down pressure on our token as they exit that into the market. So I'm going to be proposing that we potentially even discontinue that app for a period of time until we get to the point where we've got the second application for it. But it is interesting. It was actually play to earn before play to earn became an exciting meme. But it did fall prey to this kind of nothing at stake problem, which most play to earn games. So yeah, I think Markets 2.0 needs to happen this year, but I want it to be community developed. So if you're interested in where that application will go, I think the future iterations of that need to be well specced out before we get into the development of it. And I actually think it's rather divergent from our DAO suite as it currently stands. So potentially we should think about decommissioning Markets 1.0. So I'll open that up for some discussion in a bit. Just a few more points. I think the other things that we've worked on throughout the year, we've just done our first NFT launch. And one of our practices, or one of our ideas, is that the way that we can show people how to use these weird and wonderful technologies we've developed is by showing them ourselves, by incubating our own ideas. And Shibaku is one of these things. This was a surprise to me as much as anyone else. I didn't expect us at the start of the year to be making 3D dog tokens by the end of it. But crypto surprises you. And actually, the thing itself, the idea of what we've created, is a wonderful thing. I've just really enjoyed this project, and it's pushed us into this much more creative and artistic dimension. We've now got 3D modeling and metaverse kind of building experience and competency within the DAO now, and it's a kind of outreach project. It's still complicated. it's still the trait mechanics that are more complex than normal, and there's way more depth to it than your typical NFT project, especially in the Dogcoin space. So it's, again, we've made ourselves a challenging process by actually doing something interesting. But I do think that we can take that to a complete mint out, build one of the first NFT DAOs, show people how it's done, and then blow people's minds even further by recognizing that this falls within a kind of meta DAO structure. And this notion of crypto being tribal is something that's going to come up, and Tribes DAO was the idea of capturing some of that energy, showcasing how consensus tools can be useful by getting people who don't traditionally like each other to talk to each other. And again, I think I look at Tribes DAO as something we'll develop throughout the first half of this year that acts as a kind of showroom for what you can do with DAOs. And yeah, I'm genuinely excited about where that goes. Central to all of this, and getting a little bit broader and a bit more human now, away from the technology, I think we've started to develop a culture in our DAO. I think there's things happening within our DAO which are genuinely exciting. I mean, DAO culture is different than organizational culture, which, if you go into the organizational theory, you really boil it down to how much you can get your people to work without them revolting, without them striking up a mutiny. Organizational culture in the traditional sense is how you can make it as less depressing as possible for everyone to work. Whereas in DAOs, it's actually about culture. And we've done some interesting stuff, like set up reading groups, and there's some been genuinely interesting, reflective conversations that have happened in there. And that, I think, has been driven by this idea of the program that we've been running since about September, October. And this is inspired by the kind of old world I used to work in, which is curriculum design. And we've got this repeated, structured thing where we can all learn about and make sense of what's going on in crypto, in DAOs together. We've got less than 1,000 people in this Discord. I think it's about 750, which is tiny compared to some of the other Discords. But we've got engagement like some of the Discords that have 30,000 people in it. And I'm really excited about us expanding that out and maintaining that level of engagement. I think we've got the raw materials of how to organize in this decentralized fashion developing really nicely. And in the next year, I'm going to be expanding this into and working on this idea with you of what DAO leadership is and how people can lead DAOs into being a kind of into the future they can be. This is a human endeavor, and it's going to take leadership. There's always a need for leadership. There's always people who need guidance, and everyone needs guidance in DAOs because it's never been done before. So I'm excited about doing what I do best, which is design curriculum over the years, and share some of that with you. But it is going to be a big job, and we have to have a sort of collective responsibility for it. And we'll be winding that up over the next few weeks. And there is a point where I just think we don't do it because we're not ready yet. And I think we're going to make that decision in maybe 2 to 3 weeks' time. So if we hit the go button on it, you're going to be welcome to join this course. And we need to figure out what the business model for it, if there is one. Is it revenue generating? How do we make it sustainable? Can we juggle it alongside everything else? Going forward, I think that's going to sit within a mini DAO. And there's people here now who are leaders of these mini DAOs that we're going to bring on. And this is a concept that I think really opens up. It's starting to gain traction elsewhere in the space. People are calling them sub DAOs, but mini DAOs works better in my head. And this will allow us to do DAO experiments quickly and easily. They might not last forever, but they're embryonic DAOs that gestate within inside our main DAO and have the potential to go off and be their own thing after. So I'll be setting up a learning DAO. Don't know what it's going to be called yet, but we've also got propaganda DAO, data DAO, and artist DAO. And that's going to be our community-centric approach to getting people to use our tools and working with them and trying to get some real stuff done. And I think if we manage to lead that and showcase that, there's other people running at it, but I think we can do it better. And I think if we crack that, we can start to really show people how DAOs are different than conventional organizations. So just to finish off, I think you might be thinking, well, if we've got all this stuff, why don't more people know about us? Why aren't we in the top 100 in the crypto market cap when there's functionless dog tokens that don't do anything with $30 billion market caps? Why are we, with disruptive technology, not in that space? And I think part of it is that some of our own failings around communication of what we're doing. I think some of it's around our high levels of complexity. There's a lot going on. And some of it is that the market just hasn't been quite ready for us yet. But I think that is going to be the case. That is going to happen very soon. And I want us to start take a collective responsibility for the marketing endeavors. Nothing crushed my soul more than having people shout when marketing at me, like, Nick, pump the token. And I can't. It's one man cannot drive a network. And what drives networks is community, network effect, more people sharing, people understanding the idea and sharing it themselves. So I think the propaganda piece will help with this and will be incredibly important for us this year. But I'm also up for a fundamental root and branch rethink of how we present ourselves to the world in an effort to make this as co-created as possible. Our kind of .vote DApp ideas, which is a very dispassionate description of what each of these things does, mint, auction, yield, and so on. I think it hasn't quite worked as a brand as yet. So I'm open for us to genuinely co-create this and rethink our entire presentation about everything to the outward market. And finally, I think we've got a huge potential. And the thing that's at top of my list is to find people who genuinely want to set up DAOs and do creative things and build a cohort of DAOs with exciting people and start this immediately. We've got 6 apps that are ready for use. And I think we've got an idea that this DAO can help other DAOs launch. And I think it's really exciting. So the first quarter will be hopefully quite dramatic. We want to be on-ramping exciting partners. We don't want to fill up our influence space with just 500 random shitcoins. We want to curate DAOs that showcase what can be done with DAO. And I genuinely think we can lead the good practice in this space with the tools that we've built right now. So yeah, I'm going to leave that there. Has anyone got any people on the stage here? Have you got any thoughts or comments? Anything we've talked about? I would too.
Yeah, I think go ahead, Naomi.
No, that's all right. I was locked out of my computer for some reason. To be honest, I haven't heard everything that you've said before, Nick, and I think that was a really interesting review of the year, and I honestly found it quite moving. Yeah, I'm processing it as well right now. I think the point that made me think the most was about our messaging and the capturing people's imagination and the way that we have done this dispassionate thing, which kind of is a brand in itself, but it is hard for people to connect with, and creating a brand that people actually like emote with and they really can go along with it, and it tells a story. And I'm like, it's making me think about stories and how we can build our story. And actually one of the slogans, I think probably the most passionate we have, that I think Chris Cohen might have come up with, was the join a DAO, build a DAO, change the world. And I think we can really capture people's imaginations by showcasing what we do. Tribes DAO, I actually am also super hyped about. I think it's got a really exciting concept, and I think people can actually connect with that much easier. And then they'll just see the tools as ways to go about building DAOs and not put them actually in the forefront. We've actually pushed our tech too far to the front. That's not what people will connect with. It's actually with what they can do with those tools.
I agree. I think that it's the human end of crypto, and we've been very tool centric and product centric for the last year, and what we've come out with is a product suite rather than a product, and that's both a huge market advantage and also a huge challenge, because we've got more going on in a market that demonstrably likes very easily digestible things. So I do think there's going to be an element that the market moves into us, but I also think we need to respond by being much more human and going to the people. And yeah, in an effort to create this, to almost depersonalize the brand from me, I have personalized it by making it super academic. So I'm very open and for us to this run in a new direction. And yeah, I'm quite excited about where it goes. Yuvi, any thoughts?
Hey, yeah, I don't know. I was thinking about this. You were talking about this narrative of going from, there was DeFi, there was NFTs, and we're saying 2022 is the year of the DAO. And something Naomi said a while back that really captured it for me was NFTs are going mainstream because people understand images. So DAOs need to be something, if we want it to reach the same kind of hysterical peak of everyone's joining a DAO thing, which I think it's possible, but I think we do need to have it needs to be almost as simple as NFTs, like the whole 15 IQ capital sort of thing. But as far as like the summary, I feel like it's quite good. It's comprehensive. I think I don't see anything that was really left out. Yeah, it's I don't know. I'm a little bit lost for words now.
Yeah, I know you're not feeling very well as well, but there was a lot to take in there, and I agree completely. This is why I mentioned Constitution DAO. 40,000 people joined that thing, and the average buy-in was a couple of $100. That did hit a mainstream bubble, and the simplicity was, put your money in this box and we're going to do something together. And I think there is a simple message there, and a profoundly powerful one in a world which is trended towards hyper-individualism. And I think there's the potential I think there's something much more community-centric doing that is, really important, has the potential to go mainstream because it gives people something. It gives people the sense of community, even though they might be isolated, which is potentially very interesting. And say, Max, Senya, Naved, have you got any thoughts? And then I'll invite some people on the stage.
I have a quick comment about this DAOs going mainstream and etc. I think what is really happening with this kind of a paradigm shift, the DAOs becoming a thing is a part of a bigger paradigm shift from consumerist culture that we all a bit stuck. We almost can't do anything without consuming. It's often very hard. If you look at, for instance, like hobby industry, there's like a big hobby shop where I live. You go there and then you buy all this nice paint and paper and little things to make other things. So even something that is a little bit like a DIY culture that is anti-consumerism, it's getting gobbled up into this consumerist culture. So I think DAOs are essentially this. It's when it's this kind of shift from consuming into actually doing stuff. And what I wanted to say about is that I asked the question in general, what is missing? I feel like I would like to, because finance.vote is like extremely interesting project and attracts like extremely interesting people. I get stuck in it. I'd like us to see more going out and cross-pollinating other, like having some kind of, like for instance, when we were talking a lot to ETH Trader guys, it was quite interesting to see what other DAOs are doing, not in terms of, we have our cool product suite and it's really cool. And it would be like even people who develop products that are very similar, just like go and hang out with them, not in terms of being anally retentive, like Snapshot is this and we are that, but actually having this genuine cross-pollination and sometimes integration and being open to the fact that there will be DAOs who will be using not just our suite for everything, but they will just take one or two dApps and then they will take one or two dApps from another infrastructure project and we'll mix it like we do now with any tools, right?
Yeah.
So I'd like to work more on that. I don't know exactly how I'm gonna get out of my own finance.vote bubble, but yeah, going out to, sometimes it's scary because you go somewhere and someone's doing something cool and you think, oh my God, they're doing this cool thing and I wish we were doing it. But coming out of this comfort zone of being like the coolest kid on a DAO block and seeing what other people are doing, yeah, and DAO OG like Moloch, and yeah, I don't even know so many like new, like Gnosis Guild and whatever, something that maybe scares some of us as a competitor for attention. Yeah.
I agree, and that's very much the philosophy of this, building this cohort of DAOs that we work with. And yeah, I'm not at all, I don't think there has to be this kind of all in. We've got a modular framework, and that lends itself to a kind of mix and match approach, which feels like an obvious end game for DAOs. They'll be using bits and bobs from all over the place. So yeah, I agree. I think we should be doing much more outreach type stuff, and we've had moments where we've linked up with other DAOs and found out what they're doing. And I think we just need I think we've got the products in a state now where we can start to on-ramp other people into them. And we just need to build a nice funnel for that. And if we haven't got several more partners by the end of this quarter, and good high-profile ones, I'll be disappointed. Yeah, I completely agree. That's something we need to do. Matt, any thoughts? I'm massively open to ideas. I'm now at a stage where I'm not precious about anything that we've done. What I want us to do is succeed and get more DAOs into the world. I don't care how it happens. I'll do anything to make it happen, including root and branch rethinking everything about our brand. But I do think that what we've done might not have hit the bite point on the market, but I do think there's some exceptionally good stuff in there. I think there is fragments of messaging that we've already used that probably, if we just do it in a more focused way, will hit. I don't think it needs to be a baby out with the bathwater thing, but I do think we've had lots of good ideas on that front, and we just need to find the thing that lands with the market. But I'm open to anything. Thoughts on that, Naomi? What do you think?
There's always this question, it actually happens almost with every project, startup, crypto or not, about a year in, where you end up rebranding. It's just the way it goes, because you start off in one place, the market moves around you, your thinking changes, it solidifies. Like what we were thinking this project would be, it's evolved into something, because it is expressive, because the whole project is in itself about the people. So it is something new now. I think it'd be really interesting to work on the messaging with the community, because it's all about how you guys see it, how you have learned to understand it, and how we can take that knowledge and then disseminate it outside of our small community. The name specifically, there's pros and cons to changing a name. We do have some people in the space who know who we are. You can lose a little bit of brand collateral if you completely rebrand. There's other ways around it. We've spoken about potentially giving the DAO a name and using that more in our communication, and having a name for the DApp suite. So, because if we change the name, we'll also lose the connection to the token cash tag. So there's things to think about, how we can create the brand structure and how we fit the product into that and the DAO into that. Sorry, that's a round the way answer, but I think there's a few parts to how we can rebuild the brand in a way that will communicate what we're doing now.
I agree. Yeah. Interesting question. Do one of you two want to go first?
I'm thinking.
Yeah, me too.
There's a lot of guys.
Most surprising, so hard, because I've just been relentlessly surprised.
Somebody asked me, did you see when you first learned about Bitcoin, did you see DeFi coming? Absolutely not. No. I read about Uniswap a couple years ago when it was, because Vitalik posted about it on Reddit, but it was still quite small then. And yeah, I guess everything moves so fast. Yeah, a lot of it's been quite surprising. Maybe as far as our particular project, yeah, I don't know. The most surprising thing, crypto used to be just one thing, but now we're calling it. There's the tribes of crypto, because there's a lot of different directions you can go within crypto. It's not just, do you have a cryptocurrency? It's do you want to do NFTs, or are you trying to do DeFi, or are you trying to degov? So I think, and I didn't really know much about DeFi before Nick brought me up to speed. I'd taken a break from crypto before I joined finance.vote. So that was a lot of surprises in a short time period. It's a bit of a learning curve. And yeah, I've been surprised by the creativity that people bring to the space. I'd say a lot of it towards the efforts to scam people. It's really like pickle finance. I'll never forget pickle finance. It's just wow.
That ended up a kind of serious project, unbelievably. But yeah, it's
really wow.
Yeah, it ended up as part of the Yearn ecosystem or something. But
wow.
yeah, I would say you just made me think one of the surprising things, there's been several major surprises. One of the first major ones is leaving the academic bubble and discovering and moving straight into the most gangster space on the planet. And it's like you can be relentlessly surprised at how utterly scammy and unprofessional this space can be. Like at the very highest levels. And it's just so immature a space. And as an outside observer of it, you don't see that much. You don't see how much particularly pretty dodgy stuff happens in the space. And when you're in it, that was a steep learning curve. It was like surprised me, even though I'd been involved in it for so long. But yeah, I'd certainly, like you, I've been surprised at the emergence of. I was certainly surprised by NFTs. I think that, like I said, I didn't think anyone would buy $3 million digital picture of a rock. But yeah, in terms of, I'm surprised by what we've managed to achieve in the last year. To be quite honest, we've turned this kind of rapid prototyping workflow into a kind of production line for decentralized apps. And I've just been incredibly surprised and very nicely surprised at how well we've actually organized, even though we've been very loosely structured. And it gives me hope that this is the direction that things can go in. It's like people can be themselves, enjoy being at work in a very creative and exciting space and still produce lots of exciting stuff. But yeah, interesting question. Crypto is almost so relentlessly surprising that surprising stops being surprising. What's your thoughts now? What surprised you?
Crypto market as a whole, I think it's basically getting random crypto questions from my mom on WhatsApp. Like I did not see that coming. My family calling me with ideas for crypto projects. Like literally my dad the other day telling me he wants to create some sort of decentralized ledger repository of biological models
Wow.
using NFTs. And I'm like, oh, so my family have now become a blockchain. I think that's on the whole. And then with our project, yeah, I did not see us making a year ago, or like Nick, when you and I were sitting, you were teaching me all about this like quadratic voting and what it could do and mapping people's minds. I did not see us making 3D magic dog tokens.
Yes.
Like this was so far from where I thought we'd be, but I'm really happy that's where we are because it is super creative and artistic. And I think it was important for us to break out of that intellectual, very galaxy brain thinking and actually make something fun. I think it's been good for us as well to do that.
Absolutely.
But yeah, I'd say that's the most surprising thing in our project.
What about you, Ved? You there? You got any thoughts, reflections, or things that surprised you?
Hey there. Can you guys hear me all right?
Yeah.
My internet's been a little funky. Should I go on a drunken chill of XRP or Ripple right now? Or here. Are you asking more of my reflections from this past year or like moving forward or both?
Whatever you want. Any thoughts on what we've just been talking about?
Yeah, I think for me, like the greatest benefit of being in this community has been like the educational component. I'm like, feel like I've learned so much and I've gone to a lot of these crypto groups and people have been in crypto for quite a few years and I'm sometimes able to form a very cogent like statement and people are like kind of impressed and I'm like still feel like a noob and not and I feel like that's a great strength that we have and you've been discussing this educational component moving into this year and I think that could be a good entry point for us whether it's kind of like our brand or drawing in like a group of people and keeping them like solid because it seems like a lot of the marketing for the other projects is just get people in by waving shiny things so we can pump and etc. Where like this has the potential of doing something more solid and really keeping people engaged. And I, in my experience, say leading the imagination time calls or the unwind sessions, I'm seeing it grow and like more people coming and they're consistent and the feedback's been good. So it's like a solid base. It's just not people coming, listening in and seeing if we're pumping or not, or just dabbing their fingers, and it's drawing more people in, and it's getting people solid. And so sometimes the reflection there is like, okay, some people are like, oh, it's not moving fast enough, but we're building a solid foundation, so it's gonna be more genuine, gonna be around for a long time, and so that's exciting. And I guess the thing that, yeah, I'm looking forward to is also like this talk about. So we know we do governance, infrastructure, and like making this the year of the DAO. And maybe it was you who mentioned like we gotta get that out to the people. We gotta promote it and get it out in the right way. And yeah, it'll be interesting to maybe we do some brainstorming sessions around that. Like how do we get that out there? Because that's the next big revolution. But then how do we make it digestible to the palate for other people? Yeah, I feel like that's my chime in for now. I could talk for hours, but
Thanks, Naven. So I've
Yeah,
invited
like-
Gene and El Tito to the stage. Gene, I'm sure you're relatively new to us. Yeah, feel free to ask any questions or add any reflections you've got.
Oh, yeah, thank you. I appreciate it. Yeah, I am relatively new, but enjoying myself immensely. And the first question, I suppose, would be: Has anyone ever told you that you actually looked like Dr. Nick?
What, the Simpsons character, Dr. Nick?
That's right.
No one's ever said I look like them. I've had Dr. Nick quotes at me throughout the year, but maybe I should. That way, I've not leaned into that quite as much. Maybe I should start wearing a lab coat.
Wouldn't be a bad idea. Yeah, that's it. For one more, serious note, I really have a similar sentiment to Naveed, and you all have made great comments and points, questions concerning the structure and the direction and good thoughts. Maybe reasonable to think about some sort of pre-brand, but of course there's the considerations like the token connection and what you've built to this point. But you mentioned the killer app question. What is the killer app? And if I may say, for my own reflection, the killer app for this group and this concept is your minds and your hearts and your sincerity and the fact that it's real. And the most most intelligent thing, in my opinion, for you to do with that is to keep it firmly on your sleeve and allow people to gravitate towards that, because it has significant capability and power. And the products and quote unquote products that you built are top notch, high quality. Really love Ksenia's idea about seeking out co-participants in the DAO experiment or DAO journey or whatever. Whoever's been doing this, they are natural allies, despite creating some of the same tool sets and having some of the same intentions. It's not a competition thing for a zero-sum game. It's clearly the prisoner's dilemma of such, quote unquote. But obviously the game theory solution is the coordinated, positive, collaborative answer. I hear frequently from some intelligent people, some Gitcoin people specifically, it's all coordination, right? Just maximizing that effort and cleaning the signal from the noise. De-obfuscation or filtering effort will improve your hypothetical results. But if I may also say, to give yourself a break or relax on the price question or price discovery issue, because truthfully, I think that you'll find that it's most fortunate that the token price is, if you want to say it, is so low or is not near its all-time high, because that will allow a more, and it's a cliche term, but organic growth by allowing people who are just going to be entering to participate by not feeling like the project has already accelerated away from them.
Yeah, I agree.
And so you'll enjoy that fact, and it's a good thing to not have too many participants at the moment, because the best type of growth is going to be slow, sustainable growth. So people who are going to want to participate will be encouraged, and they will make their way. And really, in terms of the branding concept, saying that you're willing to do anything to change, as long as the DAO growth thing happens, the 1,000 DAOs a day. then it will. And I really think that the academic concept is the most intelligent, and it's really the best approach, because conceptually, academia is the intelligent, safe place to be. You're not doing anything dumb by being an academic. It's a good direction to go, and it's a good intent signaling exercise when you stake, yourself at a spot that's, I know this to be true, and it's a beacon to help people make their way through the noise.
Thanks, Gene. Yeah, great points. Really appreciate that. Yeah, and I think we have to stay true to ourselves. I don't want us to change our values in an effort to try and adapt, try and force it into this market. I think if we're around for long enough and we keep doing cool stuff and we keep building connections and keep building a community, our time will come. I'm convinced of that. And yeah, I think we've got to stay the course in many ways. We've not played some of what I would consider some of the scammier games in the space. And I think and I'm glad that we haven't. I want to be able to say that we've done everything from a strong sort of position of trying to do the right thing, which has been difficult at times when you get pressured from various different angles to try and do things that, that sometimes the space wants, but we don't think is quite right. So I think we should stick to who we are, and I think eventually we'll get there. So I agree with you completely. Tito.
Sorry.
Oh, sorry, Gene. Were you saying something then, Gene? Sorry, you just glitched out.
Yeah, I was just gonna say that I feel terrible for you having to sit in the Telegram channel and be assailed by the pressure of people asking you to bump it and whatnot. But yeah, I hope that you'll put that past you, and not let the pressures worry you, because it doesn't matter what it will be, but it will be good with you. Keep the right frame of mind, and stay the course. But thank you. I was gonna lastly just thank you for saying Flutarchy out loud, because gave me the opportunity to look it up. And
Yeah,
I
one day it'll be big.
saw the paper. Hansen paper. I saw Vitalik write something about it, but it's so brilliant that it's like really cool secret weapon. So maybe not put it so far up on the shelf, maybe on the back burner for the moment. But
Yeah, I
good on
agree.
you.
Awesome. Tito, do you want to ask the question?
Yeah, I only want to share with you my opinion about you was talking about. In first place, thank you for your words. Wait a minute, please. I will try.
Tito's fiddling with his mic. Has anyone else got any questions? If you do, stick your hands up and get you on the stage.
Get his mic going. You can click on his user and put the user volume all the way up. If you can't make any adjustment, that might help.
I can just about hear you, so go for it, Tito. I'll be able to relay it. Do you want to try again? Fabs, I saw you stuck your hand up then, but you've disappeared again. I don't know if anyone else. Did any questions come up in the... There's Al. Tito, do you want to try and ask your question again? I can relay it if you're quiet. I think we might have lost them. Fabs, do you want to ask your question?
Actually, it's less of a question. I'm just waiting to get a COVID test so I can fly back home, and I don't know how much I can talk, so I was hesitant to contribute. But I'm really excited about being part of this group and watching it grow and go through the challenges. I do think that we ended up a bit academic and a little bit focused on products, and I hope that my experience with sales and etc. is going to be useful here. I think it's going to be a really fun year.
Yeah, I do too. I agree. Good luck with traveling back, by the way. Al,
thank you.
Do you have a question?
Yeah. Sorry, I was just curious about proposal.vote. I just didn't hear it mentioned, and wondering if there was progress or on the background on that or anything.
Yes. So there is progress in the background. We've actually built foruming capabilities. It's not visible to anyone yet because it's not been, the UX for it has not been structured. But we have built a proposal formation system into Influence that will be integrated into app. And it's actually in our strategy meeting yesterday, we came up with 3 top priorities of the kind of small, medium and large priorities. First was the small one was to get our bank airdrop completed and get bank up and running. Our next major one was marketing and thinking about this messaging and branding piece. And the other was get influence as our top project this quarter in terms of getting it to that point where proposals can be formed within it. And we're super keen to work with your DAO and with the Stoner Cats to do that. So I think we want to, our vision for that is that we build this proposal system in collaboration with a number of launching DAOs, so it works for as many people as possible. So we want some people who are creative DAOs. Is it Metaverse Studios, Al? Is that what the DAO name was?
Metawood Studios.
Metawood Studios. So you're the Metawood Studios DAO. We want to work with you as a creative DAO to make sure that proposal app does what a creative DAO needs. But we also want some DeFi DAOs, and we want potentially a stable coin, and we want a few other good broad cross section. We want to focus on NFT DAOs as well. And yeah, I think we can start playing with it pretty soon. I think what I'd quite like us to do is get some pre-production builds of it where people can sort of play with it, or it's ready for wider consumption, and that's what these early groups will be doing. So yeah, I think we can start playing with it. We're going to have product sessions on that over the coming month, and it's our top priority on product this year. I see was having two product pieces that I think will get us to something like a full DAO suite, and that is proposal and decision. That completes our kind of second layer governance bit, where proposal is if influence is what should we talk about, proposal is what should we do, and decision is the final trustless execution piece that decentralizes everything. Yeah, I think that's our major target for this year, and we'll want to be working with people like yourself to get that built in collaboration with you.
Perfect, thanks. And yeah, we're available for exactly that influence discussion as well, feedback.
Nice.
Thank you.
Let's maybe set it up next week.
Yeah, perfect. Yeah, we'll just take a couple of days to arrange to get a meeting.
Let's talk async and sort it out. Okay, El Tito, have you managed to get a functioning mic?
We'll try it. Do you hear me?
You're a little bit quiet, but ask you a question, I'll be able to relay it.
Okay, I will try. Not only one question. We were talking about the Ethereum mainnet. We are working in Ethereum market, almost in PSC to doing the market predictions. But there are many possibilities, as you said, that in CK's rollups, I think that is the near future. And I think we need to study a possibility to moving.
I agree.
There are many possibilities there. I think that is the road at the moment. What do you think?
Yeah, and so for those of you who couldn't hear, that El Tito asked about multi-chain and do we have a multi-chain strategy? And this was very much in our thinking early doors. We actually built our own bridge to get assets into EVM compatible chains, and we talked to the people who built the original code base for it, and we'd realized we'd built the bridge before they had, and we'd actually picked up their open source code and run into this new space with it. And yeah, it was an exciting time, and I think the multi-chain narrative is going to be absolutely huge this year. And I see Ethereum as like our home base, but our original sort of brand title, I think it might still be on the website, is consensus layer for DeFi. And yeah, I did always see us as being blockchain agnostic, and every one of these chains is going to need DAO infrastructure, and there's various payoffs of going to these different places, and some of them are absolutely booming at the moment. I know Avalanche picking up massively, and there's some up and coming chains. It is something that we want to get to. And I actually thought the markets app, if we do version 2 of that, is the perfect sort of way to run that over. It might be that just our minting suite is a good thing to get over first. And if it's EVM compatible, we can do it quite quickly. And I think it does open up these ecosystems. And the answer is yes, we're actively talking to a number of other blockchains, other environments. I know Yuvi's very interested in Starkware and the Starknet technologies, and I think particularly the roll-ups are going to be absolutely huge this year. So I do think we should develop that competency internally and develop a strategy for getting there early. So multi-chain very much in the roadmap. The slightly more difficult ones are the kind of new and emerging major chains like Solana, Polkadot, and Nia to a lesser extent, but also the Cosmos ecosystem. All of those will require a kind of re-architecture of our code, and some of those are getting EVM compatibility in, and to try and facilitate what that is. But some of them will need quite a lot of work, such as Polkadot and Solana. Nevertheless, I do think we want to get there, and we might try and access some ecosystem funds in this sort of first half of the year to try and do that. So yeah, completely agree. I think multi-chain is going to be super important. It is going to be a multi-chain world. And there's things that I would be personally very excited about, which is things like cross-chain governance. And Tribes DAO in particular has the potential to be doing some really interesting stuff there, because we can set up an NFT DAO on lots of different chains and use the kind of meta DAO concept to span all the chains and potentially even do some cross-chain governance stuff, which I think would be really exciting and very forward-thinking for the space. So yeah, 100%, it's a major thing for us to be keeping an eye on this year. I think one of the things that would be cool for the DAO to work on is, I think you suggested it then, which is that let's research these new up-and-coming, there's at least 70 L1 protocols, and one of the votes that we anticipated would be pretty interesting is what chain next. So I'm open for us to do, let's have a vote on it, and we'll do it, whatever comes up. But we need to have what makes it an interesting vote is it has these payoffs, right? There's some chains that we can get to quickly and easily without rewriting any code. And then there's some chains that are going to cost us a couple of $100,000 and 6 months work. Yeah, I think that there's a really interesting conversation there. So I'm very game for going multi-chain, and I think we should do that this year.
Okay, thank you, Dr. Nick.
No worries. All right. We've been going for an hour and 40 minutes now, so we're probably getting towards the end. But if anyone's got any final questions, feel free to stick your hands up. If not, let's chill for the day. I thought that was really good. I hope we should have a recording of this for people to listen to at a later date. What's on tomorrow, Matt? Are we doing the community call? Wonderful. I'll certainly be along for the community call tomorrow. Try and pop into the morning session as well. Great. Thanks very much for listening, everyone. Very much excited for this year. I think this time next week, we should have something like a roadmap we can share with you for the remainder of what the rest of the year might look like. So reflective week this week and a very sort of forward-looking week next week. All right. Thanks very much, everyone.
Thanks.